Well, the Browns 23-20 losers here in Atlanta. They are now 2-2 on the season after falling to the Falcons in a close game. Mary Kay, what was your big takeaway from this game?
You know, there were a lot of things that happened in this game, but I think the number one thing that stands out in my mind is the fact that the Atlanta Falcons took over that game in the second half with the running game, and the Browns were powerless to stop it. I think it had a lot to do with the fact that Myles Garrett was not out there, Jadeveon Clowney was not out there, Taven Bryan, and they just could not stop the run.
Yeah, Ashley, a 10-play drive, 75 yards, all run plays by the Falcons to take a 17-13 lead over the Browns. And, Jacob Phillips said it after the game, that's not who we want to be.
And it was especially interesting because this wasn't Cordarrelle Patterson who went out there and beat them, right? He was the third leading rusher in the league coming into this game, but Huntley was the one who beat them, who was a practice squad guy who got elevated. So I just think overall it wasn't the players who we talked about a lot who were going to beat them. Patterson, of course, Kyle Pitts, and Drake London. They combined, I think, total for 80 yards or something like that. So overall it was these guys on the ground who they weren't expecting. And yes, Cleveland didn't have their star players, but that's the exact kind of performance you don't want to give up.
Now, Mary Kay, a lot of fans talking about Kevin Stefanski, some of his decision-making. Of course, he went for it on fourth down early in the game. He also went for it on fourth down inside his own 30. He converted that one. What did you think of Kevin Stefanski's decision-making today in his play calling?
You know, I didn't have as much of a problem with the 4th and 3 at the end of the first drive in the first quarter when they opened the game. I didn't have that much of a problem with it because they knew they were going to have to score a lot of points down here in Atlanta. They knew that they did not have their defensive guys, 3 of their 4 defensive linemen, and I think they thought they were going to get into a shootout. Atlanta has been scoring some points. So I think they thought, let's get 7 instead of 3. With all the weapons that they have against the 27th ranked pass defense, I just don't think it was that bad of a decision.
Yeah, Ashley, I think to me, it's like kind of low-hanging fruit to say, well, if they get those 3 points at the beginning of the game is tied. I mean, the game plays out so differently over the course of 4 quarters. To me, the bigger issue I had was some of the goal line play calling, but what did you think of the fourth down decisions?
No, I'm with you. I think this is a team that has been good on fourth down this year, which people might not know on the surface, or it's a recency bias, right? We see the play happen here, so you think, oh, they shouldn't go for it anymore. But analytically, they have been pretty good. It was early in the game, kind of like what Mary Kay is saying. When they think it's going to be a shootout, it's understandable. But I'm with you, Dan. That play, especially where they threw it on fourth at the 1 yard line, not on 4th and 1, but at the 1 yard line. Wyatt Teller gets called for a holding penalty. It kind of blew up the entire drive after they got down to the 1 yard line on a great catch by Donovan Peoples-Jones. It led to a Cade York field goal, but there were 3 or 4 points right there that they left on the field. So there were multiple instances in this game where things like that were happening. I think it's more about being more effective in the red zone than maybe on those fourth down calls.
All right, so Mary Kay 2-2 after 4 games, and the schedule gets very difficult after this. They've played a pretty easy schedule to this point. There's a lot of teams in the division are 2-2. The other 2 of the other 3 teams outside of Pittsburgh are both 2-2. But where does this team stand right now?
You're exactly right. That was the cushy part of their schedule, and they ended up 2-2. They're going to look back at this loss and the one to the Jets and realize that they let 2 games get away that they should have won, and I think that's going to sting. They're heading into the gauntlet of their schedule coming up. A lot of tough teams coming up. But as you mentioned, they're all bunched up there in the AFC North at 2-2. So it's not like they've fallen too far behind anyone else yet, and they still have a chance to accomplish all of their goals, and they'll be getting some of their defensive linemen back too.
Yeah, Ashley, where do you think this team is right now?
I think it's kind of fitting their 2-2. I mean, we've been talking about, this team could be 4-0 as easily as they could be 1-3. So splitting the difference 2-2, it kind of is fair to me, I guess. It's like a fitting record for them to have, I should say. Because we've seen certain breakdowns kind of happen over and over again, particularly coverage breakdowns, defensive breakdowns that I don't think anyone, including the people in the building, was expecting to happen, because the defense was supposed to be the strength of this team with how many returners they have. I still think it's kind of surprising to see a lot of the coverage breakdowns that we're seeing at this stage. stage.
Well, things are about to get tough. As I mentioned, they've got the Chargers at home next week, the Patriots at home. Like, the Patriots went to overtime with Green Bay. Maybe they're not as bad as some people think. And then they play 2 tough division games at Baltimore and then home versus Cincinnati before they get to the bye week. It doesn't ease up after that either. Of course, we'll cover everything over the next 5 weeks, over the next, I don't know, however many weeks are left, 14 weeks, all at cleveland.com/Browns.